Let's get something straight right from the beginning. Kindness by itself is not enough to survive in this world. It sounds uncomfortable, maybe even harsh, but deep down, you already know it. If you truly believe that being a good person was enough to achieve success, respect, or security, you wouldn't feel the frustration you felt so many times before. You wouldn't feel that quiet anger when you realize you're always the one giving, understanding, forgiving, and somehow still ending up last. Think about it honestly. How many times have people walked all over you while you stayed polite? How many times did you do the right thing, only to be ignored, overlooked, or worse, used? You were taught that honesty, nobility, and good intentions would be rewarded. You were told that if you stayed pure, if you stayed kind, things would eventually work out. But reality doesn't match that story, does it? The world doesn't reward goodness by default. It rewards those who understand how the game is actually played. And this is exactly where Machiavelli enters the conversation. Machiavelli understood something that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. Human nature is not noble. Human nature is selfish, inconsistent, and when pushed far enough, ruthless. In The Prince, he made it painfully clear that virtue without intelligence is weakness. Goodness without strategy isn't moral superiority, it's a liability. And that's the trap so many people fall into without even realizing it. Ask yourself this: the people you admire, the ones who reached power, influence, or freedom, do you really believe they got there by being nice all the time? By always playing fair? By trusting everyone? Of course not. They succeeded because they understood when to be visible and when to stay hidden, when to show warmth and when to show strength. They understood that morality is not something you blindly apply in every situation. It's a tool you must know how to use. The difference between a player and a pawn isn't goodness. It's awareness. The problem isn't that you're good. The problem is that you've been good without protection. You assumed others were playing by the same rules you were. You assumed fairness, honesty, and reciprocity were universal. They're not. The world is full of predators disguised as friends, opportunists who can spot naivety instantly. And without realizing it, you've made yourself an easy target. Machiavelli doesn't tell you to become a villain. He offers something far more powerful: intelligent kindness. Intelligent kindness means understanding reality before acting morally. It means reading people instead of projecting your own values onto them. It means knowing when to trust and when to keep your guard up. It means realizing that not everyone deserves access to your energy, your time, or your loyalty. There's a reason Machiavelli said it is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. And let's be honest, most of you chose to be loved. You chose to be accepted, agreeable, harmless. You chose comfort over confrontation. But look at the result. Did it bring you respect? Did it bring you power? Or did it teach people that they could take from you without consequence? Kindness without strength does not inspire admiration. It inspires pity. And that's an uncomfortable truth many people avoid their entire lives. I'm not telling you to stop being good. I'm telling you to stop being naive. There is a massive difference. The world doesn't reward the just. It rewards the shrewd. True virtue is not submission. True virtue is balance ethics guided by pragmatism. Machiavelli also understood something that many still underestimate today. Image is everything. It's not just about who you are. It's about how you are perceived. If you project weakness, you will be treated as weak. If you project strength, you will be treated with caution and respect, even if nothing about your inner character has changed. Think back. How many times did you allow disrespect because you were afraid of losing approval? How many times did you stay silent to avoid conflict, only to realize later that silence cost you far more than speaking up ever would have. This isn't about cruelty. It's about strategy, knowing when to act, when to speak, when to step back, and when to push forward. Kindness is powerful when it's controlled, when it's disciplined, when it's backed by authority. But when kindness is uncontrolled, it becomes your greatest weakness. The mistake many good people make is believing the world values purity of heart. It doesn't. The world values security, power, the ability to make difficult decisions. Kindness is only respected when it stands on a foundation of strength. Without power, kindness is invisible. Machiavelli would tell you not to be a lamb in a world of wolves. Not because wolves are evil, but because pretending wolves don't exist doesn't make you virtuous. It makes you vulnerable. True virtue is not passively accepting whatever happens to you. True virtue is intelligence. It's shaping the environment instead of being crushed by it. So ask yourself honestly, how much longer are you willing to let the world walk over you? How much longer will you mistake tolerance for strength? I'm not telling you to abandon your values. I'm telling you to align them with reality. Learn when to smile and when to show your teeth, because the world isn't fair, but it is predictable. And once you understand its rules, you can play the game without losing yourself. Machiavelli didn't write The Prince to turn people into monsters. He wrote it to teach them how to survive. And survival in this world requires clarity. It requires seeing past comforting illusions and accepting uncomfortable truths. So, here's the real question. Are you going to keep believing that kindness alone will protect you? Or are you ready to combine goodness with intelligence and finally stop being a pawn? Because once you see this clearly, there's no going back. Now here's where things start to get even more uncomfortable, but also more powerful. Understanding reality is one thing. Learning how to shape it is another. And this is where a concept very few people truly grasp comes into play. The perception of power. It's not enough to be strong. You have to appear strong. It's not enough to be intelligent. You have to project intelligence. In this world, reality matters far less than how people perceive you. That idea alone explains so many things you've probably witnessed but never fully understood. How many times have you seen an incompetent person rise faster than someone far more capable? How often have you watched a manipulator climb while a hard-working, ethical person remains stuck in the same place? This doesn't happen by accident. People don't follow the most moral or the most qualified. They follow the person who seems in control, the one who radiates certainty, the one who manages their image with precision, the one who acts as if they belong at the top even before they do. Machiavelli understood this perfectly. He knew that people judge with their eyes first and their minds second. Confidence creates belief. Authority creates obedience. And perception creates reality. Many people fail because they believe truth should speak for itself. They assume competence will automatically be recognized. They think being right is enough. But the world doesn't work like that. The world doesn't reward those who are correct. It rewards those who know how to sell their version of the story. That's why perception is not deception. It's direction. An insecure leader will never inspire confidence, even if they're brilliant. A worker who never highlights their value will remain invisible, no matter how skilled they are. A man or woman who fails to project worth will never be desired, even if they have everything to offer. This is why mastering your image is not optional. It's essential. And here's the harsh truth. People don't perceive reality as it is. They perceive it through filters, assumptions, emotional biases, and past experiences. The question is whether those filters are working against you or for you. If you're good but appear weak, you'll be treated as weak. If you're just but appear soft, you'll be trampled. If you're talented but appear unsure, you'll be ignored. It's that simple. The art of perception is what separates those who control their destiny from those who are controlled by others. And once you understand this, you start seeing the world differently. You realize that power is not always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, deliberate, and carefully curated. This leads us into a darker but necessary area: the control of information. Have you ever noticed how the most powerful people always seem to know something others don't? They move differently. They act with confidence even in uncertainty. That's because information is power, and how you handle it determines your position in the hierarchy. Naive people believe absolute honesty is always virtuous. They think saying everything they feel and sharing everything they know is moral. But Machiavelli warned against this mindset for a reason. In a world where everyone is looking for leverage, the person who reveals too much becomes exposed. A strategist knows when to speak and when to remain silent, not because they are liars, but because they understand that transparency without boundaries is self-sabotage. You don't need to reveal every thought. You don't need to explain every decision. You don't need to justify yourself to people who haven't earned that access. Machiavelli believed a leader must know how to conceal their intentions, not to deceive recklessly, but to protect themselves. Because once people fully understand you, once you become predictable, you lose your strategic edge. Think about it honestly. How many times has speaking too much hurt you? How many times did you trust the wrong person and watch your words come back to haunt you? How often did you over-explain, trying to be understood, only to weaken your position? Power is not found in constant expression. Power is found in restraint. The greatest players in history and politics, business, art, or influence understood this deeply. Strategic silence is just as powerful as speech, sometimes more powerful. Look at people you truly respect. Are they constantly explaining themselves? Do they reveal everything they think? Or do they leave things unsaid? Do they create a sense of mystery? Silence creates uncertainty. Uncertainty creates curiosity. Curiosity creates power. When you speak less, people listen more. When you explain less, people assume more. And often, what they assume works in your favor. But here's where most people get confused. They mistake silence for weakness. They think withholding information is dishonesty. It's not. It's discipline. Information is a resource, and giving it away freely is like handing over leverage without realizing it. This brings us to another critical principle: unpredictability. Predictable people are easy to control. If others know exactly how you'll react emotionally, verbally, behaviorally, they can manipulate you. They can push your buttons. They can bait you. They can use you. But when you are unpredictable, you become dangerous. And when you are dangerous, you are respected. Machiavelli understood that a leader who can be read like an open book is a weak leader. True power lies in maintaining ambiguity, in refusing to be boxed into a single role or identity, in keeping others unsure of your next move. Ask yourself, are you an open book? Do people always know how you'll respond? Do they know what triggers you? Do they know your limits? If they do, they have power over you. Unpredictability doesn't mean chaos. It means flexibility. It means refusing to be controlled by patterns others expect. It means changing your approach when necessary, not to confuse others, but to protect yourself. So the question becomes simple. Do you want to remain readable, manipulable, and safe for others to use? Or do you want to become a strategist, someone who controls their image, their information, and their unpredictability? Because kindness without strategy is not virtue. It's an invitation to be devoured. The world will not change its rules for you. But you can learn to play by the rules that actually exist, not the ones you were told to believe in. And once you do, everything starts to shift. For the first time, you stop being a victim of the system and start becoming someone who understands how to dominate it. But we're not done yet, because there's another layer to power that most people completely misunderstand. And it may be the one that changes how others value you forever. This is where things get even more subtle and far more effective. Because once you understand perception, information, and unpredictability, you arrive at a principle that separates ordinary influence from real power: strategic distance. Most people believe power comes from constant presence, from being everywhere, from always replying, always showing up, always being available. They think visibility equals value. But Machiavelli saw the truth long before social media, before modern work culture, before constant connectivity. Excessive availability destroys respect. Scarcity creates value. Absence creates impact. Think about it. Why do certain people command attention the moment they enter a room, while others can talk endlessly and still be ignored? It's not talent. It's not effort. It's perception. And perception is shaped by availability. Machiavelli warned that a ruler should never become too accessible, not because they should be distant or arrogant, but because familiarity erodes authority. When people can reach you at any moment, when you give without limit, when your time and energy are always available, others begin to take you for granted. This isn't just about politics. It applies to work, friendships, relationships, every social structure. When you give too much, you become disposable. When you are always available, you become a resource, not a person of value. Be honest with yourself. How many times have you been there for everyone, only to realize no one shows up when you need them? How often have you sacrificed your time, energy, or emotional stability for people who barely noticed? This is not because people are evil. It's because human nature devalues what is abundant and desires what is scarce. That's why controlling your presence is essential. You don't need to respond immediately to every message. You don't need to attend every invitation. You don't need to be accessible to everyone at all times. Strategic distance means regulating your energy. It means allowing absence to create demand. When your presence is not guaranteed, it becomes valuable. Many people fear stepping back. They're afraid that if they disappear, they'll be forgotten. But here's the brutal truth. If your only value comes from always being present, then you were never valued, only used. Those who truly matter don't need to shout for attention. They know when to withdraw and when to reappear. And when they do, people notice. Look at history. The most influential figures were never everywhere. They didn't waste energy on every battle. They appeared when it mattered. And when they did, their presence carried weight. Which brings us to another critical layer of power: emotional control. This is where most people completely lose the game. Many believe power comes from dominance, aggression, volume, or intimidation. But Machiavelli understood something far more dangerous. The person who controls their emotions controls the situation. The moment you lose emotional control, you become predictable. The moment you react impulsively, you surrender power. Think back to the last time someone made you angry. The moment you raised your voice, reacted defensively, or acted out of emotion. Who really had control in that moment? Not you. It was the person who provoked you. Because the one who controls your emotions controls your actions. True power belongs to the person who cannot be provoked. The one who remains calm under pressure. The one who does not give emotional reactions freely. Machiavelli believed a prudent individual must act with cold calculation, not because they lack feelings, but because they refuse to be ruled by them. This is an important distinction. Emotional control doesn't mean emotional suppression. It means emotional discipline. It means choosing your response instead of reacting automatically. When someone insults you and you remain calm, they lose leverage. When someone tries to rush you and you slow down, they lose control. When someone tries to provoke you and you don't bite, they expose themselves. And here's the key. Emotional stability creates authority. People instinctively trust those who appear centered. They respect those who don't lose composure. They follow those who remain steady when everyone else is reactive. Once you master this, you become difficult to manipulate. Others may attempt to get under your skin, but if they can't move your center, they can't control you. And this naturally leads to the final principle in this section: strategic patience. Most people want results now, respect now, power now. They rush decisions. They speak too quickly. They act before thinking. And in doing so, they sabotage themselves. Machiavelli taught that true power belongs to those who know how to wait. Patience is not passivity. It's preparation. Think of a hunter. They don't shoot at the first movement. They observe. They calculate distance. They wait for the precise moment when success is almost guaranteed. Only then do they act. That's how power works. It's not the one who moves first who wins. It's the one who moves at the right time. Impulsive people reveal themselves. They burn bridges. They make emotional decisions. Strategists observe. They gather information. They adapt to circumstances. Machiavelli believed fortune favors those who know how to adjust to timing. Knowing when to accelerate and when to slow down is what separates amateurs from masters. So ask yourself, are you rushing through life, reacting to everything, chasing immediate outcomes? Or are you learning to wait, to read situations, to strike with precision when the moment is right? Because in this world, power does not belong to the loudest or the fastest. It belongs to the calm, the observant, the disciplined. And once you combine perception, information control, strategic distance, emotional mastery, and patience, something begins to change. You stop feeling pushed around. You stop feeling invisible. You stop feeling like the system is stacked against you. But there's still one final step, the step that separates those who merely survive from those who dominate. And that's where everything comes together. Now we arrive at the point where everything you've learned so far stops being theory and starts becoming dangerous. Because understanding power is one thing, embodying it is another. And this is where most people fail. Not because they don't understand, but because they're afraid to step outside the script they've been living in their entire lives. This is the moment Machiavelli would consider decisive. What truly separates those who merely survive from those who dominate their destiny is not intelligence, talent, or even discipline. It is the ability to become an anomaly within the system. Most people live inside invisible boundaries they never question. They react in ways that are socially expected. They speak when it's appropriate. They explain themselves when they feel pressure. They try to be understood. They try to be liked. And because of this, they remain predictable. Predictability is comfort for others and control over you. Machiavelli understood that conformity is not safety. It is slow erasure. The world is designed to reward those who fit neatly into roles, labels, and expectations. And once you accept a role, you stop being a player and become a piece on someone else's board. If you do what everyone else does, you will get what everyone else gets. And for most people, that means mediocrity, invisibility, and a quiet sense that life never fully opened its doors to them. Those who leave a mark operate differently, not recklessly, not emotionally, but intentionally. They don't react the way people expect them to. They don't rush to explain themselves. They don't move just because pressure is applied. They don't feel the need to prove who they are to anyone, and because of that, they cannot be easily managed. This is the secret most people miss. Power is not about domination. It's about positioning. When others cannot fully understand you, they cannot control you. When they cannot predict your reactions, they become cautious. And caution is the beginning of respect. This is why Machiavelli valued adaptability above rigid morality. He understood that clinging blindly to one fixed way of behaving, no matter how virtuous, leads to vulnerability. The world changes constantly. Circumstances shift. Power belongs to those who can adjust without losing their center. Think about how often people try to define you. You're always so nice. You never say no. You're too understanding. You'll get over it. Labels are not compliments. They are cages. Once people believe they know you, they stop respecting you. They start using you. They start assuming access to your time, your energy, your emotional labor. And the moment you step outside that expectation, they act shocked. Not because you did something wrong, but because you disrupted their sense of control. Breaking free from this does not mean becoming cold or cruel. It means becoming selective. Sometimes you respond warmly. Sometimes you stay silent. Sometimes you lean in. Sometimes you step back. And the key difference is this: you do it consciously. When your behavior is no longer automatic, people start paying attention. They stop assuming. They start recalculating. And in that recalculation, you gain leverage. This is where power begins to compound. You begin to notice something subtle but important. People watch you more closely. They listen when you speak. They hesitate before testing your boundaries, not because you became aggressive, but because you became unpredictable. Unpredictability, when controlled, is intimidating. It signals depth. It signals intelligence. It signals that there is more beneath the surface than what is immediately visible. And humans instinctively respect what they cannot easily map. This is when you realize something critical. You were never weak. You were simply operating under the wrong rules. People didn't ignore you because you lacked value. They ignored you because you didn't know how to project it. You gave access too easily. You explained too much. You reacted too quickly. You were transparent in a world that rewards mystery. But once you change that even slightly, the environment responds. When you regulate your presence, people feel your absence. When you speak less, your words gain weight. When you stop reacting emotionally, others reveal themselves. Those who once underestimated you begin to hesitate. Those who once used you begin to feel uncertain. Those who once ignored you begin to watch. And here's the important part. You don't announce this change. You don't explain it. You let it be felt. This is where many people sabotage themselves. They learn these principles and immediately try to perform them. They become artificial. They force silence. They mimic detachment. And people sense the inauthenticity. Real power is quiet. It doesn't need to be demonstrated. Machiavelli understood that the strongest shifts happen gradually. Sudden changes invite resistance. Slow evolution invites adaptation. That's why application matters more than enthusiasm. You don't need to transform overnight. In fact, you shouldn't. The most effective strategists make small adjustments that accumulate over time. Start by speaking slightly less. Start by responding slightly slower. Start by giving slightly less explanation. Observe more than you talk. Listen more than you reveal. Pause before reacting. These actions seem insignificant on the surface, but their effect is profound. They change the rhythm of interaction. They disrupt expectations. They force others to fill in the blanks, often in ways that favor you. Over time, people begin to feel that something about you has changed. They may not be able to articulate it, but they sense it. You become harder to read, harder to manipulate, harder to dismiss. And this is where discomfort appears. Power creates distance, not isolation distance. You stop seeking validation. You stop chasing approval. You stop over-explaining your intentions. You stop defending your boundaries. And for people who benefited from your predictability, this feels threatening. They may accuse you of changing. They may say you're colder. They may say you're distant. What they really mean is this: they no longer have the same access to you. And that's the point. The system thrives on people who are easy to manage, easy to provoke, easy to guilt, easy to rush. When you step outside of that, you disrupt the flow. You become an anomaly, and anomalies force recalculation. People don't know where to place you anymore. They can't rely on old patterns. They can't predict outcomes. And in that uncertainty, your value rises. But here is the final realization, the one that determines whether all of this remains theory or becomes transformation. Knowledge changes nothing by itself. Understanding the rules does not make you powerful. Applying them does. You can listen to this, agree with it, even feel empowered by it, and still return to the same behaviors tomorrow. If you do, the system remains unchanged. Your position remains unchanged. Or you can begin acting differently quietly, strategically, without announcement. Control what you reveal. Control when you engage. Control how you respond. Because the world doesn't remember those who simply existed. It remembers those who moved differently, those who could not be ignored, those who understood the game and chose to play it on their own terms. And once you begin doing that, there is no real way back, because you will start to see the game everywhere. And once you see it clearly, the only question that remains is whether you are willing to step fully into the role of strategist or retreat back into the comfort of being predictable. Now we come to the final threshold. This is where everything either becomes real or fades back into theory. Because at this stage, the difference between those who truly change and those who don't has nothing to do with intelligence, motivation, or even courage. It comes down to one thing: action taken with awareness. Up to this point, you've learned that kindness alone is not enough. You've seen that perception shapes reality, that silence is power, that distance creates value, that emotional control protects authority, and that patience outperforms impulse. You now understand that the world operates on rules very different from the ones most people were taught. But here is the uncomfortable truth. None of that matters if you keep acting the same way you always have. Machiavelli would say that knowledge without execution is harmless. It threatens no one. It changes nothing. The system does not fear people who understand it. It only reacts to those who move differently within it. This is where the final transformation begins. The shift is not dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. It starts quietly, internally, almost invisibly. You stop reacting automatically. You pause. You observe. You choose your moves instead of being pushed into them. And that single pause changes everything. Because most people are reactive. They speak when they feel pressure. They explain when they feel misunderstood. They respond emotionally when provoked. They rush because they fear losing opportunities, and in doing so, they give away leverage without realizing it. When you stop doing that, you separate yourself. You begin to notice patterns in others that were invisible before. You see who rushes you, who demands immediate responses, who tries to pull emotional reactions out of you, who becomes uncomfortable when you don't play your usual role. And here's the key. You don't confront these behaviors. You don't call them out. You simply stop feeding them. Silence becomes your filter. Time becomes your shield. Calm becomes your signal. This is when people begin to reassess you. Not consciously at first. It happens beneath the surface. Conversations feel different. Interactions slow down. People hesitate before crossing boundaries they once ignored, and they may not know why, but they feel that something has shifted. That shift is power consolidating. Machiavelli understood that power does not require constant assertion. In fact, constant assertion often reveals insecurity. True power is felt precisely because it does not need to announce itself. When you speak less, your words gain gravity. When you engage selectively, your presence gains weight. When you remain calm under pressure, your authority becomes undeniable. And here's where many people make a critical mistake. They try to use these principles to dominate others aggressively. They try to intimidate, manipulate, or control openly. That is not strategy. That is ego. True strategists do not seek to overpower everyone around them. They seek to position themselves so that power flows toward them naturally. They let others reveal themselves. They let situations unfold. They wait. This waiting is not weakness. It is strategic patience. Remember this: impulsive action reveals desperation. Measured action signals confidence. Most people rush because they fear losing something: attention, approval, opportunity. When you stop rushing, you communicate something powerful without saying a word. You are not desperate. And nothing commands respect like that. As you apply this consistently, you will notice resistance, not from everyone, but from those who benefited from your old behavior. Some will push harder. Some will try to provoke you. Some will accuse you of changing. Let them. Change is the point. You are not here to maintain other people's comfort. You are here to maintain your position. Machiavelli would remind you that those who rise inevitably disturb the expectations of others. The mistake is believing you can grow without friction. Growth always creates tension. Power always creates recalculation. But here is the paradox. The more composed you remain, the less resistance you actually face. Because people don't fight what they don't fully understand. They fight loud changes. They fight dramatic declarations. They fight visible rebellion. They rarely fight quiet evolution. That's why the most effective transformation happens beneath the surface. You don't explain your boundaries. You enforce them with consistency. You don't announce your value. You demonstrate it through restraint. You don't chase respect. You make yourself difficult to dismiss. Over time, something remarkable happens. People stop testing you. They stop assuming access. They stop pushing as hard. And the reason is simple. You are no longer predictable. Predictability is what makes manipulation easy. Once that disappears, so does most casual disrespect. This is when you realize you've crossed a line. You are no longer a passive participant in the system. You are no longer reacting to its pressures. You are operating within it consciously. This is what Machiavelli meant by survival with intelligence. Not cruelty, not malice. Clarity. You begin to see that morality without awareness is fragile, but morality guided by strategy is resilient. You can remain true to yourself without being naive. You can be ethical without being exploited. You can be kind without being weak. That balance is rare. And because it is rare, it is powerful. Now comes the final choice, the one that determines everything going forward. You can stop here. Treat this as insight, as perspective, as something interesting you once understood but never fully applied. Or you can commit to becoming someone who moves differently, someone who controls their presence, someone who manages perception, someone who values silence, someone who chooses patience over impulse. someone who understands that power is built, not claimed. The world does not change for those who hesitate. It adjusts to those who act consistently. And here's the truth most people avoid. Once you begin applying these principles, you cannot unsee the game. You will notice how often people give away power through overexposure, emotional reactions, and constant availability. You will see how many conflicts are unnecessary, how many explanations are self-inflicted, how many losses are caused by impatience. And you will understand why so few people ever rise above their circumstances. Because rising requires restraint. It requires discipline. It requires discomfort. It requires letting go of the need to be liked. But in return, it gives you something far more valuable: control over your own trajectory. You stop being pulled in every direction. You stop being defined by others' expectations. You stop living reactively. You become intentional. And intentional people are rare. Rare people are noticed. Noticed people are respected. Respected people have influence. This is not about domination for its own sake. It is about sovereignty over your time, your energy, your emotions, and your decisions. Machiavelli did not teach people how to be evil. He taught them how to be prepared. Because in an unprepared world, even goodness needs armor. So now the responsibility is yours. You can remain visible but powerless, or quiet and effective. You can continue playing the role you were given, or step into one you design. The system will not stop you either way. It will simply respond. And remember this above all else: the world does not remember those who simply existed. It remembers those who understood the rules and chose to move with intelligence. So the question is no longer whether you understand. The question is whether you are ready to act. At this point, there is nothing left to explain. You now see the world more clearly than most people ever will. You understand that kindness without strategy is fragile, that perception shapes reality, that silence carries weight, that distance creates value, and that emotional control and patience are not weaknesses but weapons. The only thing that remains is choice. You can walk away from this and return to old habits: speaking too much, reacting too quickly, giving access too easily, hoping the world will suddenly reward you for being good. Or you can move forward with awareness, applying what you now know in quiet, deliberate ways. Remember this: power does not announce itself. It reveals itself through consistency. You don't need to become louder. You don't need to become cruel. You don't need to betray who you are. You need to become intentional. Every time you pause instead of reacting, you gain leverage. Every time you choose silence over explanation, you reclaim authority. Every time you withdraw instead of chasing, your value increases. These are small decisions, but they compound faster than you realize. The world will not change its rules for you. But once you understand those rules, you no longer need to be crushed by them. You can remain ethical without being exploited. You can remain kind without being naive. You can remain calm while others lose control. And when that happens, something shifts. People treat you differently. Opportunities move toward you. Resistance weakens. Not because you demanded power, but because you became someone who cannot be ignored. So, don't rush. Don't perform. Don't explain. Move with awareness. Act with discipline. Let your silence speak. Because in the end, the world does not remember those who tried to be good. It remembers those who knew how to play the game and played it with intelligence.